Kathy is our speaker today. As I mentioned before, the meetup today is very practical. It's a case study how Ding work with Businessmap. So you will see also on the meetup people from the Businessmap representing Businessmap. And if you will have some questions about the product itself, they will be also able to answer them at the end of the meetup. Kathy, her journey is very interesting. So she revealed just before the meetup that she started her bachelor's in equine science, and she worked with horses for a while, and then she did higher diploma in software development, and she ended up doing internship in Ding. And that's how her journey with Ding and all the technology started. Kathy at the moment is working over 6 years in Ding. She works as senior quality and delivery manager, and she is a core member of the technology leadership team. She leads a team of manual and automation test engineers to instill quality at the forefront of the business. And she overseen the delivery and launch of new product lines, partnering with major partners such as Western Union, MoneyGram, and Snapchat. And she's a firm believer in adapting to change, empowering people, and being agile, but also respecting boundaries and good practices. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Kathy.
Hello. Thank you so much, Joanna, for the warm welcome. Hope you can all hear me. I'm so happy to be here today to just present, hopefully, an authentic story about the transformation of Ding. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, the classic, let me share my screen. So I also am operating off of just one monitor, which is, okay. Hopefully you can all see the presentation now. So as I mentioned, this is hopefully an authentic story about how Ding transformed into an agile company. We started our transformation back in 2017. I would preface that I wasn't in the company when we started our initial transformation. I joined the year after. So luckily, I have had access to a lot of people who were here at the time. I've heard stories. There's been old presentations about transformation. So I'm able to share some context on what that had looked like. But more importantly, I'm able to focus on where I started in 2018 and how we've evolved over the years with Kanban, and to tell a story about where we are now. So Joanna's already given you kind of a brief of my current role in Ding, which is Senior Quality and Delivery Manager. Ding, for if some of you don't know, is an international telecoms company. We supplied top-up globally, as well as other gift cards, utility and vouchers for people who are our diaspora kind of community. So you can think of people who have moved out from Jamaica are sending top up back home to their loved ones and families. So there's a lot of different interesting products and product lines, and we've had to have a really strong delivery process to kind of make that happen. I did start out here as a QA engineer. I kind of took a gamble on a career. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, and from an early age, I was really fortunate to have a mentor. He was the head of delivery, agility, and quality, and he inspired me to not only look at quality in the products, but also quality in the process and how we delivered things as a team. I'm very much a kind of a people person, and I've kind of continued to develop my career in that way. And I think it's really important how you work with people, empower them, and make sure that things are working like seamlessly. So that's most of my background. As I said, I do want to just drive home the authentic story. And let's start. Where were we? So this is where we were, 2017, initial assessment. We were working in sprints using Jira. We found that often sprints were crammed and it left QA under pressure to try and make the deadlines. As a result, quality was often sacrificed. Lots of bugs, production issues, just a poor product experience, and overall morale was low. People working overtime to try and meet deadlines. On the opposite end, you might have teams that were under-resourced. They weren't putting enough into sprints, and they were underestimating sprints. So it was really hard for us to estimate what would actually fit into 2-week kind of cycles. We were a small company, informal kind of request management, really difficult to kind of manage stakeholder expectations, scope creep, lack of consistency in workflow, which I've kind of touched on there. We've had busy periods and less so. No metrics captured. So you're kind of just going through the day-to-day of sprints and not really capturing any metrics. They weren't capturing, bugs that we were finding, production issues, how many stories, the throughput, flow efficiency, etc. And I'll touch on those later in the presentation. Lack of common purpose. Teams were siloed. We had a web team working on their own sprints, platform team working on their own sprints, and together they might have had dependencies, but they had their own initiatives and their own priorities. And sometimes that led to initiatives being drawn out. Teams felt they weren't empowered as you're kind of pushing work into the teams. This is decided, this is what we're doing for the sprint. And it often was a one-way conversation. And because the work felt pushed in, people weren't, maybe growing, taking on things that they would have liked to have done themselves. Many teams that one shared Scrum Master. So that's, it's clear that at the time, Ding wasn't doing Scrum effectively with just the one Scrum Master. You definitely need to have the right resources in play to be effectively doing it. And that's just wasn't the case. And that's why some of these processes fell under. So that's just some of the key points there. So at that point, we got consultants in to try and identify our pain points. They were 2 days here, did one-on-one interviews, some of the key members in the business, put out a questionnaire, company-wide surveys, and then small workshops. And that's where we kind of arrived at this sort of proposition. We know what we liked, which was retaining ceremonies. We know retros were good for the team, healthy for the team. We wanted to have service delivery and operation reviews, and we wanted to continue on the stand-ups, daily stand-ups. But we were recommended to add in a pull-based system over push, which would help to empower those teams. Introduce continuous delivery with no hard deadlines. Find consistency in that workflow. Create stronger communication and visibility channels. And like I said, more autonomy and empowerment from teams. So this suggested that we would move towards a lean Kanban model. Most of you here probably know what Kanban is. It's kind of pretty popular. I'll just briefly touch on some of the points. Lean Kanban, it's a combination of lean principles and the Kanban method to improve workflow efficiency, reduce waste, and continuously deliver value. It integrates the broad waste reduction focus of lean with the practical visual workflow management approach of Kanban. Some of the core practices are visualizing workflow, limiting the work in progress, stop starting and start finishing. Very important. And the core principles are managing the work, not the people, pursue incremental changes, and then encourage active leaderships at all times. Fun fact, this was originally developed by Toyota's manufacturing company. When they were developing cars, they had signboards. So it's a method that's delivered since then. So what did implementation look like? So we secured funding from Enterprise Ireland. Luckily, so that brought us, an ability to bring in consultants and actual recognized trainers in the industry. We kicked off with 3 days of training. There was 3 Agile companies that helped us with this, Business Agility, Team Kanban Practitioner, and Agenda Shift. We trained and coached 8 teams in 3 12-week waves. So overall, that meant that we had 3 consultants on site for over 200 days across 6 months. So you can imagine this is quite the transformation to have 6 months of ad hoc coaching. Initially the teams were bootstrapped and set up ready to go, but there was available coaching to keep an eye and monitor their process from there. And then this was supplemented with additional training ongoing for the next year to 2 years for key staff members and key middle managers. We set up the Dingbats team, as it's called, so the business agility team. So you had kind of like leaders in the business, but just people who are passionate overall about processes and wanting to get involved to champion Kanban throughout their teams. And overall, the goal was to just create a sustainable learning organization for Kanban. So the key learnings, I suppose, from this was, again, to just set expectations that the learning process is unique and individual, and it's exploratory. And one of the things you also learned was like not all teams learn at the same speed. So it took some teams longer, some teams picked it up a lot quicker. We needed to pay greater attention to the remote teams at the time as well and spend more time training them. As you'll see later in the kind of slide deck, it was definitely more fun and interactive for the people who were here in the office. But so that's why we had to make an extra effort with the remote employees. It's definitely something to consider if you are going down this transformation route as well. How you bring those kind of people into these kind of transformation journeys. Highly motivated people really make a difference. As I mentioned, this business agility team was really important in setting that up, and just having 1 or 2 key people in each team to just really drive home the message and keep people on top of things. So I am going to shift into just the phases, a little bit more detailed version of what I was talking about there. So what phase one looked like. So we started to introduce Kanban concepts and tools while maintaining some elements of Scrum. So that was conducting short workshops to design Kanban board and tickets, creating a prototype board. It still reflected Scrum's 2-week iterations, implementing people's avatars, representing team members of the boards. That was always fun, picking out different cartoons and stuff. Design basic tickets, ensuring they capture essential information, and begin tracking the number of bugs and setting early kind of stages of work in progress limits. Phase 2 was then encouraging continuous improvement and beginning to refine that Kanban process. So starting to make tickets, tweaks to the tickets based on team feedback, address different challenges like modeling regression testing on the board, different weighting stages that you mightn't have considered before, dev desk code review, etc. Also working on the definition of done, continue to track and manage bugs, but expect that they might still be numerous, and then begin discussing the benefits of focusing on flow rather than time box sprints. So already at this stage, you're kind of starting to see elements of Kanban come through. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you a picture of what those boards look like. So the physical boards, I kind of miss them. They're good fun. It's probably hard to see for everybody here, like the images are quite small. But if I focus on the top 2 here on the left-hand side, there's very early stages of Kanban being implemented. You can see there's a lot of in progress stages and not a huge amount of highly defined waiting stages. We have different kind of ticket types though. So you've got probably bugs and stories. You've got swim lanes for multiple different flows if you have like an Android app or an iOS app. So you're starting to see early signs, but you're not seeing the WIP limits defined on top of these columns, as is here, it's quite a basic board. Whereas towards the middle and right-hand side, again, it's very small to see, but there's like a small little numbers here defining WIP limits at each stage. So WIP work in progress basically means that there can't be more than 2 tickets in this lane at a time. The general rule of thumb was to put in the amount of developers you had minus one. The idea is that you have a freed up resource at all times to help out with code reviews, to pick up goals, to pick up expedited tickets, or to free up someone else to work on something more urgently. Or it could also enable that right to left mindset, so helping out with regression or down the flow. In practicality, did they do that? Probably not for the most part. I'd say it's kind of stuck to the amount of devs that's there. If there's 4 devs, they'll have a WIP limit of 4 and only ever have one thing assigned to them at a time. I love that if you've seen the video of someone throwing juggling balls, they try to throw one at a time, they catch it. They throw 2 at a time, they catch it. But if you throw multiple, you're going to catch none. So that's the kind of key aspect, I suppose, of what we implemented here, and we still find benefits to this day. But yeah, all in all, they were fun, and this is pretty much the direction which we went to. If anything more to say here, I think what I would also say is like it just motivated a lot of people early on in the stage to just get really interactive with the transformation. Like you're seeing something physical, you're playing around with tickets on the board. You have this what's called a production police or a wall of shame, where if someone doesn't move their ticket physically or assign themselves properly or follow those rules and policies, they get a mark, and they probably have to buy the next round of drinks or whatever it is. So you're kind of getting people engaged. It's something physical. It's getting them into the office and interacting, pulling in the board into the stand-up meetings. So yeah, it's definitely quite fun. Phase 3 was about empowering the team to take ownership of those process and embrace the Kanban principles, encouraging leadership at all times, allowing newer members to drive changes. So unlike Scrum, where you kind of have clearly defined roles, you might have different people step up, run stand-ups. You might have other people write acceptance criteria on stories. You might have developers help out QA or vice versa. You'd have individuals step up and run retrospectives. So you had many different roles and responsibilities, but it was shared across the team, and it wasn't, on one person. But it is very important that you have people who are powerful and passionate about that space, or else it's not going to be effective. Making process policy explicit so that everyone understands their rules and expectations. Introducing WIP limits more formally to manage the flow of work, as I've shown in the images there. Like we started to really define those. Offering coaching support on demand, letting them the team pull coaching as needed, and then shifting to twice weekly Kanban retros to reflect on that process improvement and reduce bugs. And then by phase 4, it was achieving mature Kanban process with optimized flow and minimal remnants of Scrum. So some of that was moving the entry commitment point on the board to better reflect where work is truly started. Is that at product planning phase? Is that at review? Is it at refinement? Is it when the work's actually picked up by dev? Continue to make more policies explicit as the team's understanding Kanban deepens. We talked about definition of done. On each column, you're going to make a statement of what defines done. Have we ticked off whether we've added analytics? Have we done our code review on this lane? Have we gotten our pull requests signed off? Is the story QA reviewed? I mean, you can add multiple criteria and have you definition, those things that define done. So at this stage, those are kind of set up. Class of service to categorize and prioritize work effectively. And at this point, the traditional sprints had disappeared and the focus shifted entirely to continuous flow. Like I said, the team members were really effectively now taking on new roles, and we returned to fortnightly or monthly retrospectives, and at this point to reflect on the overall process improvements so the team is fully integrated into Kanban. So those are the 4 phases. In terms of time boxing, all of these phases, like how long did phase 1 take versus 3, It's hard to say. Like I said, I think each team had their own speed at which they adapted. Um, this was the 6 month project, so you can imagine it's a matter of weeks for each phase, generally speaking, but it depended on the pace of each team. Within a year, we increased the release frequency from 40 to 65. Um, I mean, it's 6 years on now, but we're currently at 100 releases in over a month. Reduced our rollbacks by 50%. Flow efficiency was around 18, and now most teams are averaging around 40%. Flow efficiency, if some of you don't know, it's the time that teams tickets spend waiting versus in progress overall. So ideally, you want to figure around 50%, being that if it's less than 50%, it means that your tickets are spending more time waiting than they are in progress. And the opposite, if they're 80%, your tickets are going through fast and you probably don't have enough throughput or enough tickets waiting. So to have 40% is a really good figure. And in 18, it just shows that there was probably huge bottlenecks in their processes. Year-on-year decrease in bugs found, so 25%. And that's what we were really trying to target out of this whole transformation. When you think of how QA have to deal with the rush at the end of the sprint to try and make up, and that's where you find problems and they kind of get glanced over. Regression time was also decreased 25 to 50%. More time for automation. We brought in automation at this point, and we had automation dedicated columns and definitions of done and subtasks, better metrics, more predictability, more career opportunities. As I said, it empowers people to step up into different responsibilities and roles, and overall happier teams. I just added in some backup data there. So this is our release count back in 2017. We're around 450 to 470 releases. At 2023, we're over 1,250. And while it's not a complete, accurate, reliable figure, like releases can be bigger, they can be smaller. I think on average, you can say that there's been a significant uptake and improvement in how we've transformed as a business. So what challenges, if we're honest, we face some challenges though in the transformation. Over time, a dedicated Kanban approach led to mixed results in company performance. Some teams embraced the autonomy, while the lack of management and direction caused confusion for others. You kind of saw sometimes where people were creating tasks for themselves and the board and maybe releasing less valuable work out. And I'm not saying, technical tasks are very important. Some of them are, but there's bugs that are maybe not so critical that we're always kind of just, oh yeah, we'll just raise it here and we'll push it through the pipeline. And those add up over time. Detailed roadmaps for H1 and H2 often change quickly into the half. We tried to set out these 6-monthly roadmaps. It was very difficult for the product team to have any sort of a planning framework around continuous flow. So then management introduced sporadic kind of sprints, to make up for some lack of results. Let's do a rebrand for 8 weeks, and here's the deadline. Or let's launch a product line in 6 weeks. And so at some periods you had continuous flow and then you had a sprint, and it was really frustrating, because there's inconsistent process. You're having to change context and change mindset. And it's just unclear in which direction you're going. I would say that, asking people to do these kind of sprints, it's tiring. You're getting to work overtime. And the one thing that kind of was a positive thing out of it is that you always launch something really brand new and shining, which was the one motivating factor. But the journey to get there was always exhausting. One team's idea of priority is completely different from the other, leading to initiatives being drawn out. We still had that issue where work was still ongoing on different boards, and the dependencies weren't quite clearly communicated. Cycle time was hard to rely on as an estimate for non-BAU items. If you know Kanban, you use cycle time as your main kind of estimate when you're communicating with stakeholders. So I am going to touch on some of those metrics later on, and it's really useful for BAU, but for those less predictable items, it was hard to rely on. We didn't always have the tools to enable the entire organization to adopt Kanban. It seemed to work for technology on operations, but maybe not so much for marketing and product planning. And then naturally enough, the sponsorship of a dedicated Kanban approach fell with normal staff turnover, and doing Kanban really properly felt more difficult over the years. So you can imagine like that 6-month transformation with dedicated consultants and that dingbats team. You know, some of those key members leave, it has a huge knock-on effect on the business, because you no longer have those people really sponsoring. And I feel like I was one of the last people, and I still am kind of one of the last people that are trying to get people into this mindset of being agile. So, okay, next slide. But again, evolution of the years. What has worked and what has stuck. So, while some of those things haven't maybe worked, there are some things that have continued to work. I think that is the visualized workflows. And we have transitioned from offline to online boards. And those online boards, while the offline boards are really fun and nostalgic, they're just not that practical. And we found the online boards that Businessmap have facilitated just offer so much more facilities and enable the teams, and we're able to connect team dependencies more clearly. You'll see I go into a piece about end-to-end management, which connects all the initiatives. And yeah, it's just been really powerful because you can customize so much on these boards. You know, you can add different criteria, subtasks. You can't move tickets unless you've ticked off a certain rule or whatever you need to have done to make sure, people, oh, I must remember to do this. It's there. It can facilitate all this for you. So that's worked very well. I will kind of touch on some of these in deeper. So ceremonies, using metrics, team formation, end-to-end management, and the discipline. And the routine. So I kind of already mentioned, I just touched on there. This is what one of our typical online boards looks like in the background. You have our lanes represented. You could see our WIP limits are hit here. So there's also a blocked ticket though, which is probably leading to why there's a WIP limit here. But in an ideal Kanban world, you would work to get this unblocked before you would pull anything new in. The rule is to start finishing and stop starting new stuff. But as you can see, like each ticket can be different. You can add on different tasks, and you can add in SLEs and time bound them if you need to. You add in dependencies. You can add in subtasks and block reasons and all kinds of stuff. So it's been very useful. And we also define the stages like quite granularly, I say, probably too granularly sometimes. But for the teams, it's been really helpful for them just to know what's next up on the line and make sure that they're taking everything off that they need to. On the ceremonies aspect, these are the ceremonies we still run in Ding, retros, show and tell, story refinements, lean coffee, service delivery reviews, daily stand-ups, bug triages, ops reviews, delivery planning meetings, and risk reviews. Show and tell is probably one of those nice ones. I don't know if some of your companies do them. Every 2 weeks, we do a Friday show and tell, and some of the teams just show what they worked on for the past 2 weeks and present new features and that kind of thing. That's something we brought in with this transformation, and it's been a really good way to just celebrate and also create awareness to the rest of the company. And the marketing team can stay informed, the customer care team can stay informed with up-to-date features. The risk review has been like a proactive choice we've made towards leading a secure and risk-free business, which is probably something that we didn't really have before we transformed. We run these fortnightly technology and business risk review meetings, and the tools that we have facilitates those. the idea is we review existing risks in the business, identify new risks, do a risk assessment. So as you can see on the right hand side, I put in like 2 examples. We can put in the likelihood, the control rating, and from there we can determine whether it needs to be action now, or can we move it into a known and accepted state, or can we prioritize it for next up? We make sure we assign ownership, and put in any actions and deadlines on those pieces, as I mentioned. And one of the other useful ceremonies then is the metrics and ops review. So we introduce monthly ops review. It ensures teams are reviewing best practices and addressing pain points. We transitioned from an offline event. So you can see in the picture here, this is how it used to operate in the big meeting room. Went to remote during COVID, and it's now a live document. It motivates the team to carry out service delivery reviews. So in order to do your ops review, you'll have to do at least 1 to 2 service delivery reviews with your team, which is basically as a team getting together, looking at your metrics, looking at your cycle time, your heat map, your scatter plots, and deciding, okay, well, this ticket probably took longer than it should have. Why did that happen? Why was it blocked? What could we have done better? And I think what has worked really well in tandem is the retrospectives and the service delivery reviews in tandem, because you tend to end up having the same conversations, or at least the service delivery review metrics gets conversation out of people for the retros, because sometimes you tend to maybe have quieter characters, maybe they're not sure what to talk about in retros. If you put metrics that are telling a story there, you have something to talk about. I think what frustrates me sometimes about these ops review, and it's very important that you have someone who's actually really interested in the stuff, passionate about it, because otherwise it just gets into an exercise of just listing off metrics just for the sake of it. Oh, this was our cycle time last month, and this is it now. You have to have someone ask those questions. Okay, well, why has it changed? Why are we spending time here? And leading on to these questions that they need to answer in their ops review. So what process did you improve from the last month? What held you back this month? And what actions are you taking? And that's very much Kanban focused mindset. You're trying to continuously evolve, and review any best practices you can in the team and experiment. So it's not a very pretty slide here, but I did just want to show what some of those metrics might look like. You have your cycle times here. In your continuous flow, we track how long from the point of commitment until the story is archived. You have what's called a cycle time. So it'll take typically maybe 25 days for the web team to complete an item from the time a developer pulls it in to the time it's finished. And then we categorize those into an 85th or 95th percentile. So generally speaking, the majority of tickets will go into the 85th percentile, and that will be your typical average as a team. And then you have some exceptions above the 95th percentile. And that's what the cycle time helps us to capture. And the important thing is not to compare yourself with other teams. I mean, they have their own processes, their own products. It's maybe a completely different release model, but you should compare yourself probably in 3-month cycles. Compare yourself Q1 to Q2 and what's changing, what's not working. Why is your cycle time gone significantly up or significantly down? There's probably a reason why. The blocker clustering can be handy. You customize and add different reasons for blocking, which can happen. Maybe there's something that took a higher priority. Well, it could suggest that you have an issue of prioritization in your team. You're waiting on others or third-party dependencies. That could suggest some issues in how you're handling and prioritizing these tickets again, if the other team's not ready. Annual leave, are you planning effectively around annual leave? Do you have the right people to be able to hand over tickets to if they are on annual leave? Bugs, are you focusing on the right hand side on the board? fixing the bugs before you start on something new. So it can indicate a lot of things from these metrics. And then the heat map I have below, it represents where the team spends most of their hours. You can see this is an example. Team is their tickets are spending a lot of time waiting to be picked up initially, ready for review. So it either suggests that the team is pulling in tickets too early and they're too busy in their flow, or they're just not focusing on reviewing tickets early enough. So that's on the kind of key metrics, I suppose. There are a couple other ones, like I mentioned, flow efficiency. There's like it's like Monte Carlo, which we probably wouldn't have really used typically. And there's a couple of other ones in there. That have since been depreciated. We do capture like different bug metrics that the QAs do, and we'll capture trends of, okay, we found more production issues this month compared to last month, and really dig into the deep dive into those reasons as to why, and maybe was there something we could have prevented? Did we not plan out a test plan effectively, etc. Team formation, this is something we experimented with. So I mentioned earlier on, we had siloed teams. We had web team, platform team, apps team. And during that over the past 5 years, we did transition to more mission-based squads. So you'd had an acquisition kind of squad or a retention squad, and that would encompass all of the different types of engineers. You'd have whatever you needed to deliver something for acquisition across web and apps. And Kanban was really flexible in facilitating this, and squads did hit the ground running immediately. But long term, we found it really difficult. From a QA's perspective, QAs are having to pick up app knowledge, test iOS, test Android, test backend, and well, it's really good for career development and just overall making sure that they understand the system as a whole. It just meant that the quality was unfocused. I remember being obsessed with the website and exploratory testing it constantly, but when I had 20 products to manage, I was leaving that to the side, and that's where quality kind of just gets neglected when you don't really have strong ownership of those products. You had shared repositories and deployments, and for us, it meant restrictive release scheduling for teams. So they kind of had to coordinate often, we're doing a release and platform, you'll have to wait for us, or they had to piggyback on those releases, and it became a wider regression. You need to bring in more teams. At this point, while we had good automation, it still wasn't really where we needed to be as well. So in some products it was reliable, in others not. So we reverted to these chapter-based squads, and that's continued to work well. So web, app, and platform, because now it's different. We've had people transition into leads in the role. So we have a dedicated engineering lead and representative in each of those team, app leads, web leads, platform leads, and they would be kind of based in the relevant kind of planning circles and communication circles, along with chapter meetups and stuff like that. And they've also created initiative-led Slack channels. So, if we're building out a new feature, we're going to spin up a Slack channel with all the key people and report all the communications through there. And we also have those information share forums. I mentioned show and tell. We also do a QA knowledge share. So the QAs will sit down and do something similar and explain how they approach this from a testing point of view, what regression tests or auto tests they've added. So the rest of the team is on board. And that's how I have kind of enabled the rest of the team to kind of get on board a bit more with learning new technologies and learning about the platform and the systems. So they're not as siloed. And the other thing that has continued to stick, but just evolved to an even more productive tool now, is the end-to-end management. So you can think of it as it's a higher level tracking board. It tracks initiatives across multiple teams. So once we decide something's on the roadmap, we'll go in there, we'll create the initiative. Maybe it's like a rebrand. Put the rebrand in there. It could be across web, app, and platform changes. And from there, we can create child initiatives across the other team boards. So you'd have a child initiative for platform, one for web, and one for app, and each of the individual tickets get linked up. And on this end-to-end board, you can have a higher view of all the smaller linked individual tickets. As you can see, the little gray boxes here, and they all indicate how many tickets and the progress of which we've made. So you can see, like, for example, here, there's an initiative that's 50% done. So that's been useful for stakeholders and senior management to just come in here and view, okay, where are we with this initiative? It's also open for the rest of the teams as well to just see, oh, I just want to know what the platform team is working on right now. We do weekly end-to-end stand-ups around this board with product managers representing each team. So just to kind of get a status check-in, what is really neat, and where I had mentioned earlier in the presentation that at the time, some of the teams didn't have the planning tools that we needed at that time. We now do. We have planning views and Gantt charts to be able to, you know, assign timelines, rough timelines. They're not sprint, they're not time boxed, but they're an idea or an estimate of, yeah, we expect this is probably going to land in August, but at the end-to-end stand-up, what we'll do is go and update it and say, no, that's not hitting this week, it's going to next week. So basically it's a live document of where we're at. So anybody can go in and say, okay, I can see that initiative isn't finished here. It looks like it's going to be end of August when that's done. We also align on priorities for the week, discuss blockers, surface new actions. And hopefully that's the last on what else is stuck, but the discipline is obviously what's worked out really well. Even though I did mention earlier we were breaking one of our WIP limits, I do have to sometimes just remind people. I've been kind of doing 6 monthly kind of refresher training with the teams and making sure that they just realize the importance of WIP limits again, and then they get on board with it and they're like, yeah, they're really important. And they just go back and revisit their WIP limits, you know, because you could add developers and remove developers and not remember to reflect those WIP limits. QA product the same as well. But they are effective, and make sure that we're not committing to too much, and you're only picking up one thing at a time. And we really do focus on finishing items before we start anything new and not half completing items. Working right to left, so we continue to work in different roles if we need to. Our developers are fantastic at helping out QA bottlenecks if we need to. If you see the ready for QA line is exceeded, they're going to jump in and help take on one of probably not the bigger stories. So they might take a small task because that's that we trust them with, and instead of picking up something new. And that's definitely something that all the teams still do, and I don't need to keep on top of that. They all see the benefits in helping out where it's needed and working together as a team. The classes of service, so you've seen, I have plenty of examples on that board, different exit criteria, SLEs, definitions of done. And it's just helped the team because over years we've forgotten to do a code review, and that's led to a production issue, or forgotten to add in analytics and then realized we don't have effective data tracking initiative. So while it's kind of painful maybe to have all this criteria in each tickets, it means it's done then, and we don't have to come back and revisit it and draw these initiatives out even longer than they need to. So when I mentioned one of my firm beliefs is being agile, trying to be flexible, adapt to the situation, but keep process and practices like this that enable teams to deliver fast in the long run. Ticket ownership, you can't pull in tickets without assigning something, assigning an individual to it. Something can't be assigned. Someone's responsible for it. The roles and empowerment, we have multiple people who run the stand-ups. It's not the product manager's job. Or putting in retros, putting in backlog triages, whatever it is, and the rules and policies as well. So with all that into account, where are we at now? we're kind of in a hybrid model, which I guess is Scrumban. It's our version of Scrumban. We've owned the fact that we have expectations for growth and results from the product line. We no longer create those, well, typically long drawn detailed roadmaps for H1 and H2 because we expect priorities to change as we react to the market. We use the Scrum part of the framework around a delivery planning ceremony, which is the 30-day roadmap cycles. And I'm just going to give a bit of detail on the next slide. But I think it's important to note that we still don't really have necessarily hard deadlines, but there is a clear alignment from management and teams on the most important items for that month. Teams still pull in prioritized tickets based on capacity, which is still Kanban and the pulling aspect of it. And it's still the method that we use to sponsor healthy teams. We enforce women limits. We use a pull-based system. We work right to left, encourage leadership in teams, and empower them to change and experiment with processes. Okay, and the 30-day roadmaps. So this has been a really nice addition that I've added in this year to the consumer side of our business. We were finding challenges with those sporadic sprints and then going back to continuous delivery and BAU items and overall kind of a lack of structure. So this 30-day forecasting is a meeting that we do once a month. We do at the end of the month to kind of plan up for the next month with all the cross-collaborating teams. So representatives from web, app, platform. You'll have your product team in there, representatives from leadership team. You'll have a lead data engineer from one of the teams, a designer, one of the lead developers, and the QA as well. So it is a two-way conversation in that, the product team come along and say, well, we want to prioritize this. Developers can say, okay, but we really need to do this refactoring or we need to do a containerization for this project. And from there, we make decisions. Okay, well, that's going to be the first thing we do. This will be the second thing we do. So it's an idea of what we'd like to finish for the month. But most of all, it's a 1, 2, 3 of everybody knows this is the most important item. The benefits as well of it, while it's maybe annoying to bring so many people into the room at the same time, it can be seen as wasteful. I don't like to run wasteful meetings, and I don't want a meeting to be unproductive for some members of the teams. I think in this space it works really well because it might have a knock-on effect on the teams. Whatever the platform team is prioritizing could be really important for the iOS team. So they need to make those decisions together. And that's what we were lacking before. These 30-day conversations are really bringing that to a surface now. And all the teams are very well aligned on what they want to do as one kind of unit, but working in their individual silos as well. So it's a win-win for teams' autonomy. They kind of come forward and suggest things they want to work on, but also the company results because we now say, okay, well, this is really important for the business. Can we please focus on this? And it's the right audience in there, as in, you got the product officer and head of product and product leads as well to be able to make one decision on what they want to do. All this filters back into the end-to-end management board, as I kind of briefed about earlier. Once we decide on what's in this 30-day focus, we then create initiatives on that board and that get filtered down into the team boards. In conclusion, so yeah, I guess that's kind of a lot about the transformation for now. I just want to recap on what I kind of had said, because hopefully I might have been speaking fast at some points, but hopefully it's pretty clear. We were in a stage where our sprints were poorly estimated, sometimes too much work, sometimes not enough. Quality was compromised. And we didn't have the right resources in the company to really work Scrum effectively. Kanban's impact, it empowered teams. We had healthier workflows, and we were happier team environments. I know I mentioned a lot of the results earlier. We had 25% reduction in bugs. Our release has stepped up, but I think I can't really understate it enough how, healthy the teams are. It's the simple fact of just letting them, I want to work on this ticket instead of this ticket, and try something new. And they're able to pull, from that board is, it's small, but it's not to be understated. And they only have to, they're only allowed to pick up one thing at a time. So it's really good for their mental health. We don't have these time boxes necessarily where they're rushing to do overtime to get this in. So it's really helped create a good company culture here. And I guess at the end of the day, we're still continuing to release value out to our customers. And this time it's even better quality than we had shipped in previous years. Some of the key learnings: many initiatives pass through workflows without clear objectives or justification, leading to high pressure occasional sprints, make up for lack of results. And I think the other thing is lean Kanban. It's a shift in mindset. So sponsorship and training really needs to be upheld. And that's one of the big challenges after transformation. The 6-month period is over. It's hard to maintain from there. So you need to make sure that you either get, if people are in and out of the business, you need to get training back into the business and just kind of instill that mindset again, or make sure you still have those passionate people to continue to spread the message and awareness, and also keep a lot of documentation as well on these methods. It's very useful. So yeah, where we're at now is kind of a shift to a Scrumban kind of model, where we have 30-day kind of roadmaps, but we still have the WIP limits and discipline, I suppose, of Kanban, ensuring that we have alignment with evolving business demands, and maintaining a focus on delivering value. And that is it. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That was very interesting and very practical. It's really lovely to see how another company does it, so we can learn from. It's not theory, but we are actually learning from your practical experiences. So thanks very much for sharing. I'm very mindful of the time. So for everybody who has to go, because we hit 7 o'clock, we want to be respectful of your time. So before you go, just please, if you are in Ireland, should it happen you are in Ireland in October, we would like to invite you to our upcoming conference on the 2nd of October in Cork. And then our next meetup in October, it will be on iterative ways of delivering APIs. So it will be a bit technical, but it's it will be a practical meetup as well, to find out how to do it, because there is lots of questions about can you implement Agile with API development. And then we will have somebody sharing their experience, their knowledge in that area. For anybody who has any questions, please stay, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions. For anybody else who would like to go, thanks very much for joining. We very much appreciate you decided to join us this evening, this actually afternoon, morning, depends where you are in the world, and spend that hour with us.
Echo everything Joanna said. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming along. And I'm really thrilled to have shared my story. I didn't expect it to go on so long. I thought it was going to be a lot quicker than that. So I'm glad I had a good bit to talk about. But yeah, I welcome any questions.
That's loads of, you covered loads of there. So yeah, that was well spent hour. So thanks very much. Okay, so let's wait a few more minutes and we'll see. If there are any questions, you can either unmute yourself and just ask it, or please type it and I will read it. And if not, if there are no questions, you are very, very welcome to go, and see you next time.